The top floor. Part 1. The delivery. His name was Nathan. 29 years old, single, living alone in a small rented apartment on the south side of the city. He'd been working as a delivery driver for one of those apps for almost 4 years now, ever since he dropped out of college and decided he didn't want to drown in student debt. The nights were his territory. Not for the money, honestly. It barely covered his rent, but because the streets at night had a certain quiet that matched him. It was easier to think when the world was silent. That Thursday night felt like any other. Summer had finally eased up, and the breeze drifting through the avenues made the day's heat feel like a distant memory. Nathan was parked at a nearly empty gas station, sipping a warm soda and checking his phone. The delivery app was open, but nothing had popped up for about 20 minutes. Pretty normal for that time of night. And then the notification appeared. New delivery available restaurant. Golden Walk to 4.2 destination. 811 East Bayview Street, apartment 14B. He recognized the restaurant. It was about 7 minutes from there, tucked behind an old grocery store on a half-hidden street. He'd picked up from there before. The food was always hot. The owner quiet and efficient. Nothing special. But the delivery address didn't ring a bell. East Bayview was in an older part of the city. Apartment buildings from the 1960s, most of them barely maintained, with narrow entryways and creaking stairs. It wasn't exactly dangerous, but it also wasn't the kind of place you wanted to hang around longer than necessary. What caught his attention, though, was the payout. $24.80 for a short trip. More than double the usual rate. Nathan hesitated for a second, but the negative balance in his checking account spoke louder. He accepted the order, slipped the phone into the holder, and started the car. Getting to the Golden Walk was easy. The owner, as always, stood behind the counter, wrapping the food with an almost ridiculous amount of care for that kind of restaurant. He handed over the bag without saying a word. Nathan gave a slight nod and left. Back in the car, he pulled up the route on the app. The building was about 10 minutes away, cutting through a part of town he didn't like driving through. But everything looked normal. Just a weird delivery to an old building. Nothing special. Until he got there. East Bayview Street looked exactly how he remembered it. Cracked sidewalks, old lampposts with weak bulbs, barely any cars parked on the street. Building 811 was a rectangular block of gray concrete with small windows and rusted metal bars on the doors. The front wall was peeling, and the entrance sign barely lit up the number. But what caught Nathan's attention was the complete lack of movement. No lights on in any of the apartments. No sounds of TVs. No muffled laughter from late-night conversations. Just the soft hum of the lampposts and the distant sound of a train passing on some abandoned track. He grabbed the delivery bag from the passenger seat and walked up to the entrance. The front door was unlocked. He pushed it slowly, feeling the resistance of old hinges. The lobby smelled of dust and dampness. There was a row of mailboxes to the left, most of them open or broken. An old elevator sat in the center of the far wall. Its metal doors were scratched and smudged with fingerprints. Nathan pressed the button. The elevator groaned in response, coming from somewhere above. The lights flickered off and on, and for a second, he thought about using the stairs. But then the sound of brakes echoed down the hall. The door creaked open, revealing a cramped interior lined with that faded red carpet typical of old apartment buildings. A small metal panel showed the floors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Apartment 14B. Nathan frowned. That didn't make sense. No building that short would have apartments numbered in the 14s. He thought about quitting right then. But the smell of hot food mixed with the thought of that $24.80 made him step inside. He pressed the button for the 4th floor, figuring maybe it was some weird internal numbering system, the kind old buildings sometimes used. The door closed slowly, groaning like it was being dragged by a tired ghost. The elevator started moving, past the second floor, then the third. Everything silent, except for the muffled sound of the motor. When the light indicated the fourth floor, Nathan got ready. The door started to open and then stopped, like something was blocking it. The elevator lights flickered 3 times, and suddenly, the panel changed. Top floor, not a number. Just those 2 words, written in faded red letters on the display. Nathan froze. The elevator kept going up. He hadn't pressed anything, hadn't touched a thing. But the elevator was moving, and its destination was something called top floor. His stomach twisted. The emergency button was right there by the door. But when he pressed it, nothing happened. The button was dead, like it was just a piece of decoration. The motor stopped with a sharp jolt. The light flickered, and for a second, everything went black. Then, slowly the doors began to open. Nathan gripped the delivery bag tighter. The hallway in front of him was narrow, long, and wrong. The wallpaper was old and peeling, but it wasn't just that. There was something about the texture, the way the weak ceiling lights reflected in the corners. The floor was covered with dark carpet, stained in random places, like decades of dirt had been left to rot there. And then he noticed. No doors. None. No apartment entrances. No numbers on the walls. Just a long, empty hallway stretching into the darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, a low, steady sound. Something between a whisper and breathing. Nathan felt the chill run up his spine. And before he could decide what to do, the elevator behind him closed its doors on its own. He was trapped there, on the top floor. Part 2. Hallways that lead nowhere. Nathan took 2 steps out of the elevator before he even realized he was moving. Something inside him, maybe instinct, maybe adrenaline, seemed to push him forward. Like staying in the elevator was an even worse option. He stopped, looked around. The hallway seemed longer now. There was no visible exit, no emergency stairs, no windows. The air was heavy, stuffy, carrying a faint smell of mold and something metallic, like rust mixed with burnt wiring. The light above him flickered unevenly, as if it had a life of its own. Further ahead, other weak lights created pale blotches on the stained carpet, giving the impression that the hallway was breathing, contracting, and expanding slowly, like some giant living thing. Nathan tightened his grip around the delivery bag. It was still warm. "This is just a system glitch," he whispered to himself. "Old building, busted control panel. It'll fix itself." But his voice sounded hollow, like the air around him swallowed the words. He turned around. The elevator was still there. Doors closed, no buttons on the wall, no floor numbers. Nothing. Just a worn metal surface, like the elevator had never existed at all. Nathan started walking, slowly, listening to the sound of his own footsteps on the worn carpet. Every 5 steps, he stopped and listened. Nothing. No pipes. No neighbors. None of the usual sounds you'd expect from an old building. Then, on the 12th step, something changed. Out of the corner of his eye, Nathan saw a door. It was just there, suddenly part of the left wall, like it had formed in the blink of an eye. A simple door, white wood, with a small metal plaque hanging from a crooked screw. The number was scratched up, but still readable. 14B. He swallowed hard. "The delivery apartment?" he muttered, barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, touched the wood. It was cold. Freezing, actually. Way colder than it should have been for an indoor surface. He hated everything about this situation, and habit took over. He pulled his phone from his pocket and unlocked the screen. The delivery app was still open, frozen on the same screen, the address softly pulsing. He tried to refresh it, but the signal was gone. No service, no Wi-Fi, no GPS. "Of course," he whispered. He pressed the doorbell. A faint, barely audible buzz echoed from the other side. He waited. Nothing. He pressed it again. And then, footsteps, but not from behind the door, behind him. Nathan spun around instantly. The hallway was empty, but he was absolutely sure he heard footsteps too. Maybe 3 soft steps on the carpet, like someone was slowly approaching. His heart raced. He tried to stay calm, looked back at the door. Now it was slightly open. Hello? He called out. No response. He nudged it open with his shoulder, pushing it farther. The darkness inside was thick but not complete. A faint light, maybe from an old TV or a dying lamp, partially lit the interior of the apartment. Nathan stepped inside. The place was too quiet. A small studio-style apartment with old, dusty furniture. A brown velvet couch sat in the middle of the room, facing an old, boxy TV that was turned off. The walls were covered in yellowed, cracked wallpaper. Heavy curtains covered the window in the back, letting in just a sliver of bluish light. But the strangest thing was the wall clock, frozen at 2:37. He glanced at his phone. The screen was stuck on the same time, 2:37 a.m. Nathan scanned the room. No sign of anyone, but something about the place made his skin crawl. The delivery bag was still in his hand, now slightly crumpled. He walked over to a small dining table against the wall, set the bag down, like that somehow completed his job. And that's when he saw it, a framed photograph sitting on a side table. It showed a family, a man, a woman, and a child standing in front of the very same building he was in. The picture was old, sepia-toned, the paper yellowed with age, like it had been taken decades ago. The problem was, the man in the photo looked exactly like Nathan. Exactly. Same face, same haircut, same serious expression. He stepped back, bumping into the chair. The frame fell to the floor with a dull crack. No, this isn't possible, he muttered. Right then, the TV flickered on by itself. Static, white noise. And beneath the static, a voice. Male, almost suffocated. You went up, and now there's no going down. Nathan lunged for the door. It was closed, locked. He yanked on the handle, shouted, kicked the bottom of the door. Nothing. He was trapped inside, in apartment 14B on a floor that didn't exist. And behind him, the TV whispered things he didn't want to hear. Part 3. Old Presences. Nathan leaned his forehead against the door for a moment, trying to control his breathing. Sweat was running down the back of his neck, sticking to the collar of his t-shirt. The sound of the TV filled the room, a continuous static, almost hypnotic. And underneath that noise, the words kept coming, confused whispers, hard to understand. He had no idea how long he stood there, frozen. Fingers still gripping the doorknob like that alone might somehow make it work. Minutes? Hours? Time in that place didn't make sense. But when he finally turned around, he noticed something had changed. The curtain covering the window was moving, not because of wind. There was no draft. It was like something on the other side was slowly pulling the fabric back, stretching it, revealing inch by inch of the window behind it. Nathan moved closer. The fear was almost physical now, a dull ache in his stomach, like when you realize you've made a mistake too big to fix. Every step made the floor creak softly, and the TV kept whispering behind him, hypnotic and steady. When he finally pulled the curtain fully aside, what he saw made no sense at all. There was no street, no buildings, no city. Through the window, Nathan saw a hallway exactly like the one outside, dimly lit, with the same stained carpet and peeling walls. But there was more. Standing there, in the middle of that duplicate hallway, was someone. A dark figure, motionless, facing the window, as if it was watching Nathan from outside the window, but still inside the same building. He stumbled back 2 steps, nearly tripping over the fallen chair. The figure didn't move. It had no clear features, just the silhouette of a tall man, broad shoulders, arms hanging straight at his sides. But what disturbed Nathan the most was the feeling that this wasn't the first time that thing had been there. That presence knew this place, knew the apartment, knew him. The TV static grew louder, filling the room with a pressure that felt physical, like it was pressing against his eardrums. And then, another phrase came through clearer now, rough like it had traveled through decades. "You've been here before," Nathan shouted. "No." He yanked the curtain shut and spun to run for the elevator, but something made him stop. On the couch, where there had been nothing before, there was now a driver's license. It was lying slightly crooked on the worn cushion, like someone had casually tossed it there. He stepped closer, breathing hard, and picked it up by the corner with trembling fingers. The plastic was old, the edges peeling, but the name was perfectly readable. Nathan Collins, and the photo was him. Same expression, same haircut, same t-shirt he was wearing right now. His blood ran cold. He tried to remember if he'd dropped his wallet, but he knew he hadn't. He checked his pockets minutes ago. This didn't make sense. He turned back to the door, still locked. The TV buzzed on, but now, underneath the whispers, there was something else. A metallic noise, steady, like chains dragging across the floor. And for the first time, Nathan realized that sound wasn't coming from the TV. It was coming from the hallway. Suddenly, the light flickered, and for a split second, the room went completely dark. When it came back, wet footprints appeared on the carpet, as if someone had walked barefoot across the room, from somewhere inside the apartment to the door. Nathan's stomach twisted. The smell in the air had changed. Rust, ancient dust, and a faint hint of something burnt. Then he heard it. From the other side of the door, a low, guttural sound. Breathing. It wasn't pipes, wasn't the building settling. It was someone breathing pressed right up against the other side. And then, 3 sharp knocks. K-N-O-C-K. 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 Nathan stumbled backward, shaking. He looked at the license in his hand. Looked at the door. Looked at the window. He was surrounded. The TV whispered again. "You shouldn't have gone up." Part 4. The ones who came before knock. Knock. N-O-C-K. The knocking on the door continued. 3 sharp, evenly spaced knocks, like a code only this place understood. Nathan stepped back again, feeling the driver's license sweating against his palm. It felt heavier now, almost like it was pulsing. He stared at the door. He could be sworn the wood was breathing along with the muffled sound of whoever or whatever was on the other side. The handle twitched slightly. Not enough to turn, but as if it were offering a silent invitation. Open, just a little. Nathan's throat went dry. He did the only thing he could think of. W.A. Who's there? Silence. Then suddenly, a hoarse, dragging voice answered. So close, it felt like it was speaking straight into his mind. You already know who. A shiver cut through him. No, he didn't know. He didn't want to know. But something deep inside him already understood. That presence knew more about him than he knew about himself. The metallic sound of chains returned, louder now, echoing from the other side of the door. The smell of rust and soot grew stronger, and that's when Nathan noticed something else. The walls of the apartment. Where they were once covered in old wallpaper, sections were now peeling away to reveal something underneath. Not bricks, not concrete, no. There was another layer, some ancient kind of surface covered with symbols and faded words, like frantic scribbles left by someone in complete despair. He moved slowly toward one of the exposed sections, tracing the worn lines with his fingers. Letters. English, but twisted, warped, like they'd been melting over time. Don't trust the doors. Nathan felt his stomach sink. That's when he heard something else. Not the TV static. Not the chains. Not the knocking. A whisper. Faint. almost imperceptible, but it was coming from inside the apartment. He turned slowly. In the corner of the room, slumped against the wall like a forgotten shadow, there was another man. Sitting, hunched over, clothes torn, skin pale too pale to be alive. Nathan froze, his heart hammering in his chest. The man raised his head slowly. His deep sunken eyes looked like they hadn't seen sleep in a lifetime. And then he whispered, "I wasn't the first. And you're not either." Nathan couldn't speak. He just stared at the frail figure, like a forgotten soldier left behind on some ancient battlefield. They always call another and another, always someone new, but always the same face. The man gave a crooked, tired smile. "I was you too." Nathan shook his head. "This is some kind of trick," he muttered. "Some kind of sick psychological game." But the other Nathan, because now it was clear, it was him, kept going. "You delivered the food, didn't you? They need that. The delivery, the transaction. It's what opens the passage." He raised a trembling arm, pointing at the bag on the table. "That was your key." Nathan looked at the bag. Now it looked wrong. The paper wrinkled in strange ways that resembled faces. Little folds shaped like open mouths. A detail he hadn't noticed before. The sound of chains outside grew louder, closer, and now, mixed with the metallic scraping, there were voices. Many voices. Whispers layered over each other like a crowd murmuring prayers that didn't belong to any known religion. The seated figure chuckled softly. "They're coming to collect what's theirs." Nathan looked at the door. The wood had started to splinter, small cracks forming around the edges. And then, for the first time, the other Nathan locked eyes with him. "There's no way out except," he pointed to the window. "That way." Nathan turned. The curtain still covered part of the glass, but he already knew what he'd see if he pulled it aside. That endless hallway, and that dark figure standing there. But the voice behind him finished. "Either you go back their way, or you choose your own." The cracks in the door spread wider. Now, faint red light was glowing through the gaps. Something was scratching against the wood from the other side, trying to get in like sharp claws, dragging across rusty metal. Nathan took a deep breath, walked to the window. With trembling hands, he pulled the curtain aside. The hallway was still there, but this time, the dark figure was gone. In its place, a new detail. An open door. And inside that door, absolute darkness. Behind him, the TV whispered one final word. "Choose." Part 5. The wrong choice is always yours. Nathan stared at the open door beyond the window. The darkness on the other side didn't feel natural. It was thick, almost solid, like the very air there was heavier. But what bothered him most was the feeling, a silent certainty, that whatever that was, it wasn't supposed to be there. It was a trap, but a trap disguised as an exit. He glanced over his shoulder. The other Nathan, the one slumped in the corner, wasn't smiling anymore. He just stared at the floor, hollow-eyed, like regret was the only thing left in him. The cracks in the apartment door were splintering loudly now, the wood groaning under extreme pressure. Red light leaked through the gaps, pulsing in a slow, sick rhythm, like a heart on the verge of failure. And the voices. They were screams now. Not loud, but full of desperation, of ancient suffering stretched beyond reason. Nathan knew he had to move. But which way was right? The TV screeched again, this time with a high-pitched noise like a muffled scream slicing through the room. Another sentence appeared clearer than anything that had come before. "Choose wrong, and you stay forever." The sound made Nathan shudder. He looked again at the driver's license still clenched in his hand. His own photo, his own name, all of it leading him here. And then he saw something else on the license. Something written in faded pen on the back of the plastic, barely visible under the weak room light. "The elevator lies." Nathan read the words twice. "The elevator lies." He scanned the room, his mind scrambling to piece it together. The elevator had brought him to the last floor. The TV kept whispering choose. The other Nathan had pointed toward the window. And the elevator lied. This wasn't a delivery. It never was. It was a trap built around his choices. Every button, every step, every hesitation. All of it leading him exactly where they wanted. But why? The thought cut through him like a blade. Because he said yes. He'd accepted the order, accepted the payment, accepted stepping inside, even with doubt, even with that nagging instinct telling him not to. And now, he was part of the cycle. Rage started pushing against the fear. Nathan gritted his teeth, squeezed the license harder, and stared at the window again. The dark hallway, the open door, a fake exit, a lie. An invitation to get lost for good. He stepped away from the window. He wasn't choosing that path. He turned back to the apartment door, ready to give way at any moment. The heat of that red glow was spreading through the room. The doorknob slowly twisted on its own, metal scraping against metal. That's when Nathan heard something new. A sound from above. He looked up and there it was, a small maintenance hatch, barely visible against the faded wallpaper. It didn't look easy. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't offered. And that made it real. The other Nathan lifted his gaze for the first time, offering a faint, almost broken smile. Now you see it. Nathan didn't hesitate. He dragged the fallen chair beneath the hatch, climbed up awkwardly, sweat dripping down his arms. He pushed against the panel. It was stuck, but with a sharp crack, it popped loose, revealing a narrow crawl space filled with pipes, cables, and dust from decades of neglect. But there was fresh air up there. Not much, but enough to bring hope. Below, the apartment door exploded inward, rotted wood flying like splinters against the walls. The red light flooded the room, revealing things crawling along the floor dark. Liquid shadows with long, thin arms dragging metal claws across the carpet. Nathan grabbed the edge of the opening and pulled himself up. The shadows lunged forward. One of them stretched an arm like a coiling rope, trying to grab his ankle, but Nathan kicked hard, feeling those thin fingers slide off his shoe. He scrambled higher, skin scraping against the rough wood, until he managed to curl himself fully into the cramped space above. The sound below was chaos, a storm of furious voices, dragging chains, splintering wood, screeching metal. And then, silence. Nathan lay there on his side, breathing fast, face streaked with dust, heart pounding unevenly. But for the first time since this nightmare began, he had chosen for himself. Not a path given to him, not a disguised invitation. His path, and that changed everything. Part 6. Cycles that never end. The space between the ceiling and the building's upper floors was narrow, hot, and thick with dust that hadn't been disturbed in decades. Nathan dragged his body forward slowly, weaving through old wires and ventilation ducts. Breathing through his mouth to avoid choking on the clouds of filth kicked up with every movement. The noise from below had stopped, but that didn't bring relief. Only certainty. Whatever was down there, it was waiting now. And Nathan knew that in this place, time meant nothing. He kept moving in silence, careful not to make a sound. But it didn't take long before something else became clear. The space made no sense. It should have been a short crawl, just enough to reach a maintenance ladder or another utility room. But the tunnel kept going and going. It was like the building was bigger on the inside than it was on the outside. After what felt like minutes or hours maybe, it was impossible to tell. Nathan found what looked like a rusted ventilation grate. He crept up to it, carefully peering through, and his stomach twisted. It was the same hallway as before. Same peeling wallpaper, same stained carpet, same flickering, weak lights. But there was something different now. The walls were covered in marks. Scribbles made by human hands in black ink, red ink, deep scratches from fingernails. Words repeated over and over, some written in sheer panic, others carefully arranged, almost methodical. Don't deliver. The doors lie. I to knows your name. Nitrogen monoxide return. A chill ran down Nathan's spine. It wasn't just him. He wasn't the first. And he wouldn't be the last. He remembered the other version of himself, sitting in the corner of that apartment. Other delivery drivers, other versions of himself, or worse. Other people used the same way? And then, footsteps. Heavy, slow, echoing through the hallway below. Not whispers. Not the metallic scrape of chains. These footsteps had weight, shape, like something or someone solid, walking with purpose. Nathan pulled back into the tunnel. He had to find another way out. That's when he saw it. Farther ahead, another hatch. Rusted. Words scrawled across it in shaky handwriting. Exit? Maybe. Without any better options, Nathan crawled toward it. He pushed the panel, it groaned, but gave way. He eased his body down and dropped into a room. A wide room. But it wasn't just any room. It looked like the core of the whole building system. Part power station, part abandoned records room. The walls were lined with broken electrical panels, exposed wires, and stacks of cardboard boxes piled almost to the ceiling. Nathan grabbed one of the boxes and tore it open. Inside, photographs. Old yellowed prints. People holding delivery bags. All of them wearing the same confused, panicked expressions. Some holding driver's licenses just like the ones still stuffed in Nathan's pocket. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that in every photo, there was a shadow in the background. The same shadow. That tall, dark figure he'd seen through the window. Nathan stumbled backward, bumping into another stack of boxes. They toppled, spilling more photos, more documents, old scraps of clothing. Wallets, dozens, maybe hundreds of delivery drivers. It wasn't a building. It was a collector. A machine built not to trap someone in particular, but to keep the cycle going. Always someone new. Always drawn in by easy money. Always a delivery to an address no one would question until it was too late. And then, in the silence that followed the crash of the boxes, Nathan heard it. Not the sounds of the building. Not the whispers of the creatures. A doorbell. Ding. Dong. The sound came from inside the room. He turned slowly. In the far corner of the space, a single door, white, immaculate, with a glowing red sign above it. Next delivery, the doorbell chimed again. Nathan knew exactly what it meant. He was next, or maybe just the next victim. Part 7. The delivery was never for them. The doorbell rang again. Ding. Dong. Nathan stared at the white door in front of him. It was too perfect for that place, like it didn't belong in that building at all. No dust, no stains. Not worn, just white, like a hospital wall, cold as marble. And that red glowing sign above it, pulsing, urgent, like a warning. Next delivery. Each beat of Nathan's heart seemed to sync with the doorbell. He wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. But some part of him knew that if he didn't act now, if he didn't choose, he'd just be another one of the hundreds of photographs scattered across the floor. He stepped forward slowly, pressed his ear to the door. Silence. But not the kind of silence from an empty room. It was a forced emptiness, like someone had removed all sound from inside that space. That's when he saw it, right next to the handle. An envelope, taped there with old yellowed adhesive. Beige paper, its edges curling with age. Something written on it by hand, shaky and uneven. For the next one. With trembling hands, Nathan pulled the envelope free and opened it. Inside, a letter. The handwriting was unstable, desperate, like someone scribbling while running out of time. If you've made it this far, listen. Do not enter. Do not answer. The delivery isn't for them. The delivery is you. They always call another. Always. They need someone new to keep the cycle going. Do not accept the next. Don't touch the handle. Don't look directly at him. Do not say the name. Nathan felt his knees nearly buckle. Slowly, he turned around. The records, the photos, the boxes, the clothes. It all made sense now. That thing, the dark figure, the entity, whatever it really was, didn't want packages. It didn't want objects. It wanted people. And the delivery was always the next one caught in the trap. Always someone new. The sound of the doorbell changed. No longer the clean ding-dong. It was broken, now distorted like a screen trapped in metal. Nathan stepped back. And then, the handle started to turn. Slow, cold, precise. That's when he felt it. Not just heard. Felt like ice threading through his veins. A metallic scent filled the room, mixed with the sharp tang of ozone, like the air before a lightning storm. Somewhere in the back of his mind, that familiar static buzz from the apartment's TV whispered one last phrase. It knows who you are. That's when it hit him. This building, this floor, this cycle wasn't real. It wasn't physical. It was a place built from him, his fears, his regrets, his wrong choices. A labyrinth stitched together from everything he'd spent his life avoiding. And now, it had a price. Nathan squeezed the crumpled letter in his fist and shouted, "I'm not part of this." He turned and ran. Didn't know where. No visible exits. But something made him look up. The ceiling, again. Another hatch. This one with white light spilling from the cracks. He scrambled for the nearest stack of boxes, climbing desperately, taking papers and old clothing out of the way. The voices rose again, angry now, chaotic, a chorus of screams tangled with crying, laughter, and words in languages he couldn't recognize. Chains dragged across the floor. The white door behind him creaked as it began to open. But Nathan didn't look back. He reached the hatch and shoved it open. Light, blinding, white, endless. But with the light, a strange sensation. Not relief, not hope, light, vertigo. The floor beneath him disappeared, like he jumped from a cliff. And for one endless second, there was nothing, until he landed. Not hard, more like placed somewhere new. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the elevator. Same metal walls, same one panel of buttons. Everything perfect. Except for one thing. All the buttons were dark, except one. 14B, the same apartment number. And then, the digital display blinked slowly, freezing the blood in his veins. Next, you. Part 8, the final ride. The elevator was dead silent. No background music, no mechanical hum, just Nathan. And that suffocating sense that there was nowhere left to run. The 14B button was still glowing, and the display above the door glowed in red. Next, Nathan stood in the center of the metal box, the crumpled note still clenched in his sweaty hand. His legs were shaking, but not from fear anymore, from rage. All of it a carefully built lie. A trap stitched together from pieces of his own consciousness. Memories, regrets. Those moments when he'd told himself, whatever, about things that should have mattered. And now the building was here to collect payment. But it wasn't just about him. The boxes, the photos, the voices. Others had been here before. Other people trapped in the cycle, used as fuel for something older. Something that felt like it existed before the building was ever constructed. He stared at the glowing button. He didn't know what would happen if he pressed it. But he did know what would happen if he did nothing. He'd be absorbed, not slowly, not with physical pain, but in the worst way possible, erased. Gone, like he'd never even existed. The elevator shuddered faintly, as if waiting for his decision. Nathan took a deep breath, reached out with his finger toward the glowing button, and then didn't press it. Instead, he did something even he didn't expect. He screamed. Not a scream of fear, a scream of defiance. No, The word echoed off the metal walls, but that wasn't all. The 14B button started to flicker, unevenly, like something in the system was breaking down. The display above the door glitched, the letters trembling. Next. Nathan realized it instantly. The cycle was an illusion, but it needed his acceptance to work. He slammed his fist into the panel. Once, twice, 3 times. The plastic cracked, the button fractured. The elevator jolted harder now, and somewhere deep within that impossible building, something screamed. Not a human sound. A deep, muffled groan, like an entire building crying out in pain. The elevator started to move on its own. No floor selected. No marked destination. The red light flickered like a dying heartbeat. Nathan dropped to his knees, struggling to keep his balance, vertigo sweeping over him. And then, the elevator doors slid open. It wasn't the hallway. It wasn't the building. It was a road, deserted, stretching into infinity. Nothing but blacktop cutting through a nowhere landscape. A rusted metal road sign sat just off the shoulder, illuminated by weak moonlight, its letters almost worn away. Nitrogen monoxide name RO diagnosed it instantly. It was the address from his last ride. The one that popped up on the app all by itself. But now, the most disturbing detail. There was no one here. No dark figure. No creatures. Just an empty road, lost in time. And by the side of that road, his own car. Headlights on. Engine running. Driver's side door wide open. He stared at it, confused. Then, a sound behind him. A beep. Sharp. Repeating. It was the car alarm. The familiar sound he always heard when he left the key on the seat and opened the door. But that sound was mixed with something else. The beep of a heart monitor. Nathan felt the floor drop out beneath him again. It wasn't just the building. It wasn't just the elevator. It was him, stuck between 2 worlds, between 2 states of being. And then, for the first time, a real memory cut through the fog. The accident. It hit like a flash. The delivery request at 237 Amain, the strange address. That sinking feeling in his gut. The empty intersection. And headlights from the left. Too fast. Empty. The impact. Glass shattering. And suddenly, everything made sense. He wasn't trapped in a building. He was trapped between life and death. The building was the process. The elevator was limbo. And that road was the way back. The TV static's voice hadn't lied. You went up. Now there's no going down. But it also never said what would happen if he refused the next step. Nathan stood up. The heart monitor's beep quickened. The beeping mixed with the car alarm, growing louder, more urgent. He took 1 step, then another, and ran toward the car. Right before climbing in, he looked back at the elevator one last time. The dark figure stood there now, fully visible, motionless. But now Nathan saw it clearly. It wasn't a monster, wasn't a demon. It was him. A version of himself that would have said yes, that would have accepted. A Nathan that would have been swallowed by the cycle. But not this one, not him. Nathan slid into the car, turned the key. The engine's roar drowned out the sounds of the elevator. The glowing sign above the door flickered one last time and died. He hit the gas, and when he glanced in the rearview mirror, the building was gone. The road stretched out before him, cold, empty, but free. If you like this creepy story, hit like and subscribe for more. Stay curious and stay safe out there.